All right, so today we're going to talk about running a game that appears deep that you did very little work to prepare. So this is something I've done for a pretty long time. It works relatively well. It's very low investment, low effort, but it gives like a deep backdrop to everything that happens in the world. And it also helps you set up some interesting encounters without like breaking your mind trying to come up with what's challenging and what's balanced. It's organic, and I like that it's so. For this example, for this video, we're going to talk about an adventure that I wrote where basically there's a guard captain and she's very suspicious of the advisor to the magistrate, and the magistrate is just a good time party guy all the time. The minions of the bad guy, Mimeth, they are called the Silver Vigil, and they're just goons. They're just lackey. The guard captain is good guy, and her name is Astra. And the magistrate doesn't even have a name, and Silver Vigil's just they're all called Silver Vigil guys. So let's go to the screen. I've got a couple of things prepared here to make talking about it easier. So the very first thing that differs from kind of my system to the general system is I arrange my NPCs with priorities. Usually important NPCs will have like 5 to 7 major motivations, things they want to accomplish in the world. And I like to do this because it always gives a reason for why they're doing anything. There are very few like just moments when you have a priority list for your character. And more so, having multiple conflicting priorities can be really interesting. So if your players want to bribe an NPC, not just like a random shop owner, but like a major character in the story, knowing where on his list of things he cares about money is really valuable. So we're going to look at the priorities I have set here for Mimeth, the bad guy. His number one priority is immortality. So that means he will sacrifice anything for this priority. So if he's about to murder Astra and the players offer him immortality not to do it, he won't do it. How do you bait this guy? You offer him immortality. You give him a path to become a lich or something, and he will work with the players in that instance. He's also trying to control the magistrate so that he can kind of keep his little corner of the world and continue researching immortality. See, it all feeds straight up when you prioritize numerically in an order. It will all flow really, really. So his number 3 thing, kind of like his hobby, is that he wants to kill Astra. He is tired of her shit because she's investigating, which makes it harder for him to control the magistrate, which makes it harder for him to get immortality. See how it feeds straight up the list. So then we've got Astra, captain of the guard, and the thing she cares about most in the world is protecting the town. She's a good guy. When it comes down to does she want to sacrifice her life to save like a random townsperson from a random problem? Absolutely. She's basically a fireman, right? So then the second thing is her duty to the current leader, which is serve the magistrate. So having this priority list, if the magistrate gave her an order to not protect the townsfolk, we know she would ignore it. We know that she would fight against that. And normally when you write an NPC, it's kind of more wavy and like, I don't know what they'd do. I have to figure it out in the moment. If you write priorities out, it solves itself. And the eventual payoff for this prep work is confidence. So a lot of new DMs don't have the confidence to make a decision in the moment like that. But having it listed out like this, you absolutely you just make the decision and you go. Easy peasy. So her number 3 thing is finding out what Mimeth's up to, which means you could talk her into a lot of things if you were to suggest that it's going to help bust Mimeth. Now, I wrote find out what he's up to because she doesn't know. She hasn't figured out what's going on. He's just really suspicious. But he's the advisor to the magistrate. So she suspects that he's poisoning his mind, which brings us to her number 2, which is serve the magistrate. And then number 1, protect the townsfolk by keeping the magistrate on the straight and narrow. All feeds straight up. It's great. Then we get to the magistrate, and basically he's just party time. He wants to have a good time all the time. He flaunts his wealth. He spoils, well, I don't know, spoils his people, but he throws feasts all the time. You know, like he will just give you a goat just to be able to say he gave you a goat. His number 2 thing is that he wants to keep his lands and get more. He wants to be the best magistrate that ever lived. So he wants to impress the king. Now, he would impress the king at the cost of his people, right? So if he needed to make them do a little bit of slave labor, if he needed to take their taxes, you know, that sort of thing, he's totally fine with it. He cares about party time, impressing the king. And then thirdly, he wants to be perceived as super generous, best magistrate ever. He doesn't actually care about being super best magistrate ever. And so that helps us like figure out how the magistrate will respond to different arguments about Mimeth from Astra or the party themselves, right? Like if they come in and say this man's been doing this or that, like the amount that he gives a fuck is in this priority list, which is what makes it so useful. And then the Silver Vigil, if they were, well, we'll get there. So they have 2 priorities. Don't get killed by Mimeth, right? And then also they like abusing the townsfolk. They like being in the gang and just kind of hassling folks, being on top, but not actually on top. You know, that little middle management grade. You're familiar. I know you are. So what we're going to do, now that we've kind of laid out the groundwork, is we're going to add a faction to this adventure. So we're going to add, we're going to call them road dogs. They're going to be mercenaries in the area, right? They need a card. So let's, I will get to the cards in a bit. That is the next thing. I just neglected. Okay, fight to the death is fine. So every major NPC, so you have factions, right? Such as the Silver Vigil. And then you have major characters that are part of that faction or lead that faction. So Astra is kind of the patron character of the town guard. So when an action is taken, it's going to be Astra doing it, but it might just be her underlings, right? She's going to be the architect of that action. So it's going to follow her goals. In the same way, we've got the road dogs. All right, so real quick, we just write up some motivations, right? Like money and kill the sea dogs, right? So there's going to be a rival group of mercenaries called the Sea Dogs, and they have a rivalry with them. But they're way more interested in money because they're mercenaries. That's what they do. So like I said, normally you would have like 5 to 7 motivations for a major character like Astra or Mimeth. But for like throwaway factions in the region, Road Dogs is fine. A little bit of money. So what's up with the cards? How do I send this to the graveyard? Need you. Oh, okay. So the method for generating a robust setting and like a world that feels lived in, even though you're not doing any of the work to write like a real writer, is the story deck. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your favorite card game. I know you have one. Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or .hack Enemy, which is the only cards I have on hand. That's why we're doing Cockatrice. And so you're going to pull out cards that inspire imagination in your mind, just things that are visually interesting, right? So we pulled out Fight to the Death for the mercenaries because it looks like a lot of guys. There's an axe. The colors are kind of red and kind of, you know, grumpy. It's like a battlefield, right? So we have Mardu, Runemark, for Astra. We've got Mangara's Blessing for Party Time Magistrate. Sadek, Lord of Secrets for Mameth, because that's kind of his thing. And then Gifts Ungiven. Now, this comes into play between adventures. So in addition to the character cards, set those aside. Once you have one for each patron character in a faction, like major character. And then you're going to go through and just pull out every card that like sparks interest in your mind. Could be the flavor text, could be the art, could be the effect itself. Could just be like the creature section, right? Like legendary or vampire could, be what we're going to pull out. But just pull out anything that catches your eye. You should get a pretty sizable deck because you're going to reuse it over and over. You want enough cards that you can interpret them multiple ways. So in this example, I literally just went down and enter and added a bunch of random cards. So it might not work out as well, but we'll work with it. So basically between adventures, your players just finished an adventure, they're at the tavern, and you've got 2 weeks until your next game. So immediately what you're going to do, pull out your story deck, which is this deck of cards. Separate your character cards, shuffle them up. Draw a character card. We're going to say we pulled out Mameth, right? So what we're doing is we're deciding what it is Mameth is going to begin working on between the last adventure and the next adventure. He's not going to complete this action. During the next game, this is what he's going to be doing. So if the players go to find Mameth, right, or if they go to the area in which he's operating, it'll organically generate a story that you're somewhat prepared for. So let's just get to the example, right? So you're going to draw 2 cards, and the format is who does what, how. So what does Mameth do? So we're going to draw a card. Fight as one. So we're going to look at the card, and we're just going to grab inspirations out of it. Right, so it's an instant. We do what? Target human creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains indestructible. So we'll draw 2 more cards, or 1 more, right? We've got Nethroi, Apex of Death, legendary creature, Cat Nightmare Beast. So what we could do, we take what we know about Mameth. He is searching for immortality. And then we've got this, an indestructible creature. And then we've got this, a legendary creature, Cat Nightmare Beast. So what Mameth might be doing when the next adventure starts, whether the players are around him or not, is he is summoning a Cat Nightmare Beast, which you'll design, you'll flesh out, who is considered indestructible. And this was part of his immortality research. So just by drawing these 3 cards, we know what Mameth is doing, even if the players don't go there during the next adventure. So that's going to feed into the adventure after that, and the one after that, and maybe they hear rumors or they send out spies or whatever, and now you have something to flesh the world out with. Things that are happening, not centered around the players. It gives Mameth depth, it gives his faction depth, and it just kind of fills the void of nothing happens that you don't explicitly say in a game. You can generate a kind of history really, really easily, really, really low effort. So we'll pop in here and we'll be like, Myth summons Displace a Beast, right? And we'll make it a modified. Now you figure out what the modification is, you figure out all that. If you suspect the players are going to end up facing Mameth next game, you're going to want to have this ready. But if you don't, it's also totally fine. So that's good. That is done. Sadek is sorted until the next game. And then after the game, you'll do the same thing. So what is the Silver Vigil up to? We'll pull it out. Makeshift something? Right, makeshift mannequin and Gift of Growth. So what do we got? We got untapped target creature. It gets +2/+2. If the spell was kicked, creature gets +4/+4. Makeshift mannequin, return a target creature from your grid. So they're just snatching people in town. They're snatching bodies. And they're crypt robbing, basically. So if you go to the graveyard next game, the Silver Vigil will be crypt robbing. Robin Cripps. Okay, so then we'll do the Magistrate. And you should draw the characters randomly, but this also works fine. So what's he got? Malicious Advice. Tap X target artifacts, creatures, and or lands, you lose X life. Festive Funeral. These cards are perfect for the Magistrate, right? But it's only perfect because we did all this fleshing out previously. If we didn't, these cards would not be any more well suited for him than these are for Sadek. But they are, right? We've got Malicious Advice, which comes from Mimeth. And we've got Festive Funeral, which is totally in line with Magistrate. Very, very often, if you choose your inspiration cards correctly for the story deck, you will get like nice matches like this. It will just spark into your mind instantly. So we know what he's up to. Okay, we're almost there. We're going to do them all because I think it's important to show how the RNG comes together. So Mardu Runemark is Astra, according to our chart. What is she up to? Dweenen's Elite. When Dweenen Elite enters the battlefield, if you control another elf, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. March of Reckless Joy. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may exile any number of red cards from your hand. The spell costs 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way. So, I don't know what to do with the March of Reckless Joy. We could consider this to be a reference to the Festive Funeral. And I think Dweenen's Elite is going to be an old friend of Astra that she's called in to help investigate Mimeth. So we're going to say old elven private investigator visiting. So I don't know why that matters to me, but it does. We're getting there. We got one more, and then we're going to just completely tie it all together, and it's going to make sense. So, fantastic. Our road dogs got Bootlegger's Stash and Nadier's Nightblade. So, there are not going to be any road dogs in the town during the next adventure because they're busy raiding the motherfucking sea dogs. Okay, so hopefully you could follow that because we're going to go back through it now. And I'm making a lot of logical jumps because I'm just drawing inspiration from everything on the card, right? This could have been about elves. This could have been checking every corner doesn't help if you forget to look. They could have been raided by the sea dogs. They could have, labyrinths of tunnels beneath. They could be in the dungeon. If there was a dungeon in your adventure, that might be where you make the connection. But since we don't have a dungeon, there's, no connection to be made. Okay, so imagine you are the players now. Okay, you have no knowledge of the priority list. You have no knowledge of any of this having happened. You just say, I want to hire some sea dogs because you heard about them last adventure. You as the DM can now say, oh, there's no sea dogs in town. No road dogs, right? Because you know where they're at. You know what they're doing. You know what all the major factions are doing at the start of the next session. So if they go talk to Astra, right? She's going to be there with her elven friend, right? Or she might have just gotten some information from the elven friend. And you can push your story down the line and you can fill the backdrop is the goal. To make your campaign appear more robust than it is. And this is the laziest way I know to get like really in-depth characters and really in-depth world with virtually no effort whatsoever. So you're going to write your adventures as normal. You're going to lead your players through a story. And this is just the foundation for it, right? So if you wanted to give them an adventure for, I don't know, like killing Mimeth, right? You can base your entire adventure, you can flesh out this idea as much as you want, right? Like this Displacer Beast could be the boss. You could have them go through Mimeth's like lair and like dungeon and stuff. But equally, you could run an entire townscape adventure about helping, or maybe the old elven private investigator is evil and he turns, like any one of these can generate a full adventure. Um, but we want to generate all of them so that it appears that the world goes on around the players, even when they're not the center of attention. So that's where I'll leave it for now. That's the story deck. I hope I've explained everything clearly. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Hey guys, so we're almost ready to test the tabletop RPG that I've been working on. It's language based and not math based. So while there is rolling dice and there are some stats, everything's really just with words and linguistics and description and narrative. There aren't like little squares that you're counting or anything. It's not quite ready, but we're going to be testing soon. And if you are interested in being a part of that, head over to the Discord and we'll get you on the list. But it's definitely not fleshed out. It's not ready to publish or anything, but we need testers. So if you're interested in the deep role playing and like really using your words and working with the DM to craft a group storytelling experience, then head over and I'll see you there.